Hello and welcome. My name is Crista Hermance. I am the estate planning mom, and today we're going to be talking about estate planning questions and answers. So I've been going live every day to answer your estate planning questions. So the thing that we're going to start with today is going to be related to guardianship and how to nominate guardians for your minor children. That is the first topic that we have. But I do have some questions that people have sent in over the past few days, and I wanted to get to those. So if you are joining us live, say hello in the chat. Let me know where you're joining us from. And if you have any estate planning questions, please put those in the chat as we're going to be going through those. And again, we're going to be starting with that guardianship, right? How to nominate guardians for minor children. So, hello, thanks for joining. If you have minor children, so under the age of 18 is considered a minor. It is important to have guardian nomination documents done for those minor children, that if something were to happen to you and the other parent of the child, that you would have your wishes legally documented to make sure that you are able to say, if something happened, here's who I would want to essentially raise my children. And it's something that's so important to do. And most parents know that there's probably something that they need to do, but not really sure about what to do. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to nominate guardians for your minor children. If you're just joining me, please make sure that if you have a question about estate planning, to please put it in the chat. So nominating guardians for your minor children. Here are a few tips. I also do want to include in the chat a free printable that I have on nominating guardians for minor children. And I will get that posted in the chat here for you shortly. Okay, so tip number one on nominating guardians for your minor children. When you're nominating guardians, it's important that you nominate somebody that actually has a relationship with your kids. Put yourself in the situation that if worst case scenario, something happened, right? And you weren't there for your kids and your kids had to go and be with these guardians that you've nominated. It's important that they have a relationship with them, right? That they trust them, that they know them. And so it's important that, as much as you can, annually, my husband does this. He makes sure that we go and visit the guardians that we have for our children, because he wants to make sure that they have those relationships, they know them, they trust them. So making sure that they have those relationships built with the people that you have nominated as guardians. The second tip that I'll give you is, you're never going to get it right on exactly who is going to be the best fit, but something is better than nothing, right? Because something is, then at least it's your voice, right? It's you being able to say, if something were to happen to me, here's who I would want to be guardians for my children. I will also say that if you are trying to determine who you want to be guardians, I oftentimes find families where the parents can't agree, and so they just decide that they don't want to nominate guardians for their minor children. And so it's easier, right, to just kind of put it to the side and not think about it. But I will say that there are discussions that need to be had, as well as generally sometimes compromise. Maybe you have one that's going to be the primary guardian, and then the other one is going to be the backup, right? And when you're nominating guardians, I generally recommend having one as the primary guardian and then backup, just in case something were to happen and that first guardian isn't actually able to be in that role. Another really important is to consider the age of the children and the age of who you are nominating to be guardians. And so, for example, if you have elderly parents that you want to be guardians and you have an 8-month-old baby, it might be hard for your elderly parents to care for an 8-month-old, not to mention the quality of life for an 8-month-old being raised by elderly grandparents at that point. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying it's things to consider, right? How is it going to affect them? How is it going to affect the children? Another important one is, where do they live? Right? Do they live in the same city? Do they live in a different state? Are they international? And so these are all really important things to consider. And, it could be based on the age of the kids, right? So if you have kids that are close to high school age, if something were to happen to you, having to transport them and uproot them from their current life and move them cross country during the middle of high school might be, even another layer of trauma that they're going to have to go through. And so it's taking all of these kind of factors into consideration when nominating guardians for your minor children. Okay, so in the chat, you will find information on the free printable for nominating guardians for your minor children. If you're just joining me, my name is Crista Hermance. I'm an estate planning attorney. You might know me as estate planning mom, and I am answering your estate planning questions. And this is a live opportunity that if you have any questions, please put that in the chat. We're going to get to those. I do have some comments that were left from yesterday's live Q&A that I do want to get to, and I'm just going to look at the chat here. Okay, so question that came in. I have a special needs child that will live with me all his life. Are there special needs trusts needed? So yes, there are special needs trusts. And the important thing with a special needs trust is to make sure that if you have a child that has special needs, whether they're a minor or they're an adult, you want to set it up that if they are to inherit anything from your estate, that one, you make sure that their trust within your trust would be set up for them to receive it and still get government benefits, right? That's one of the biggest things is you don't want them to come into all this money from some type of inheritance and then lose access to those benefits. And so a special needs trust can be done as part of your trust when you're creating a revocable living trust, just that if something were to happen to you, to make sure that money is going to be given to them in that manner to make sure they still receive those benefits. So great question, very important. If you need help with nominating guardians for your minor children, there is a free printable. Just send me a message and put guardian in the message, and we'll get that link sent to you to be able to get that free printable. Okay. Okay, so next question that came in: single mother, father not involved, no contact, can I create guardianship without court custody? So you can nominate guardians for your minor children on your own, right? You can do it as a single parent, and you can say, if something were to happen to me, here's what my wishes are. You do not need any type of court intervention to create that document, because again, guardian nomination is your ability to say, if something were to happen to me, here's who I would want to raise my children. So really important for you to be able to do that. The issue is you don't really know what would happen if something happened to you, right? Is dad going to get involved in the situation at that point, or is dad going to stay not involved and the guardians would then be able to come forward and petition the court according to your wishes? Okay, great question. Okay, so if you're just joining me, please put any estate planning questions in the chat that you may have. I am answering questions that I have gotten over the last few days as I do this daily live. Again, estate planning is really, it's such an important topic. A lot of times people, they have misconceptions about what it is. There's a lot of bad information out there, people that just give bad information. And sometimes it's just really people don't know, right? And so I think that's what's really important about this is an opportunity for you to ask those questions, right? Okay, so let's go to another question that came in. If we set up a trust, can an ex-spouse or children from a previous marriage contest it? Okay, so you use the term we, so I'm assuming it's a married couple that's setting up a trust. So if there is a married couple that is now setting up a revocable living trust, can an ex-spouse or child from a previous marriage contest it? So the ex-spouse should have no standing to be able to contest the trust, because they're not an heir of you or your spouse, so they shouldn't really have any ability to contest it. Unless there was a minor child involved and they were contesting on behalf of that minor child, that's where I could see it potentially coming in. As for the child, yes, if there is a child that is your child and you had put specific language in there about something regarding that child or not regarding that child, they do have the ability to contest that trust. Generally, when we're working with estate planning clients, we want to understand what the circumstances are. And so, this is really where working with a professional is really important. And if you are considering putting your estate plan together, creating a trust, I highly recommend working with a professional so you can talk through some of these challenges. Because a lot of times, what people don't think about is, they say, oh, I'm just going to do a basic trust, something that I found online, or somebody has a friend that can draft it for me, but they don't think through all of these potential issues that could come up. And then there's a lot of money that's spent to litigate this after the fact. And that is the other side of the work that we do, is helping families from this aspect as well, when it comes to contesting trust. So with the facts that I just went through, something that we would generally work through when creating that estate plan is to understand, what do we think that the child is going to contest? And I'm assuming it's an adult child at this point. What do we think that they're not going to be happy with? Um, and so, like, the worst thing you can do is just not mention the child at all in the trust. If you just completely leave the child out, then they have a better standing to come forward and say, look, they didn't even mention me in the trust, and they forgot me. I'm an omitted heir, and then at that point they have more standing to be able to contest it and potentially get a large percentage of what they would receive through intestate law, right? What their percentage would be without it. So that's like one of the worst things that you can do, is just not mention the child at all. So it's important to mention that you have this child, and the reason, the reason is that you're doing what you're doing, so that the court has a better idea as to why. I've seen people say, oh, I'm going to leave them $1, right? Because I want to leave them something. I don't understand why people tell people to do this, because what you're basically doing is you're saying, okay, well, now they're a beneficiary. Now I'm inviting them to be a part of this plan and to be able to get all of the information and stuff that they wouldn't necessarily get if they weren't a beneficiary. They can still get some stuff because they're an heir, but now you're inviting them in as a beneficiary. So, one of the things that we do when we're trying to understand why somebody would want to disinherit somebody, or maybe leave them a different percentage, is what would be the amount of money that they would not contest, right? For some people, it might be, a couple $1,000s, maybe 5, 10. It really depends on how much money is available. Because then if they contest and they're not successful, a lot of trusts will have this no contest clause. And that no contest clause means that if they contest the trust and they are not successful in their contest, then they get nothing, right? And so you have to make it worth the while that, well, if you contest this, you're going to be losing this money that you're entitled to through the trust, because now we're having to fight for it. Okay. So that's one thing to consider when looking at having a child that potentially could contest a trust. Okay. Great question. Okay. Let's see if we had any other questions that came in. If I live internationally, US citizen, can I still create a trust for my child? Great question. So, generally, when we look at creating a trust, you are creating a trust where you have primary residence. And so maybe you have property that you own, or maybe you're going to be coming back to the US, and then making sure that you create a trust in that state where you have that residency. That's really important, because then that's where the courts would know that if there had to be some type of court intervention, you could get it set up through there. Okay. Okay. If you're just joining me, we talked about guardianship in the beginning of this. So if you were looking for tips on how to nominate guardians for your minor children, please comment or send me a message that says guardian, and we will send you a free printable to be able to get those tips on how to nominate guardians for your minor children. And if you are just joining me, if you have any estate planning questions, please put those in the chat. One of the things that, if you're watching this in the replay, you can either send me a message with the question and get to it tomorrow, or put it in the chat here if you're watching this in the replay, and I will go through it when I do Q&A tomorrow. Okay? Okay. I think that is all of the questions that I have seen come in. So at this point, I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me today. And if you have any estate planning questions, you are in California, you need help getting your estate plan set up, please send me a message and just put help or consult in the chat, and we'll get you a link to be able to schedule that free consultation to get some assistance getting your estate plan set up. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.